Welcome to We Hope in God channel, and welcome to the deep dive. So glad you're with us. You know how we do it here? We take a source, in this case, some personal reflections on scripture, and we pull out the good stuff. We're
Exactly.
looking for those little nuggets of grace, the insights that kind of jump off the page and really speak to where you are right now.
Yeah, that's the whole mission. And today, our focus is it's on the book of Deuteronomy. We're looking at Moses's final words to Israel. I mean, it's such a huge moment in their history.
A huge moment. And the core idea that Moses is trying to get across is all about God's character. We're really digging into what it means to see God as not just all-powerful, but as deeply and actively faithful.
And that's such a fascinating contrast, isn't it? Because we all get the idea that God is sovereign. He could just command things to happen, and they would.
Right.
But the idea that this all-powerful God would instead choose to commit, to enter into a covenant with, very flawed humanity, that's really the heart of what we're exploring today.
I love that. So we're moving past just like a description of God and
Yeah.
into the reality of his actions in history. I guess the main question we're tackling is, what does it mean when the creator of everything chooses to bind himself with a promise?
It changes the whole relationship. I mean, commitment usually implies two equal parties, but this is completely voluntary on God's part. It's revealed through time. So let's just jump into the specific text that holds it all.
Okay, let's do it. Let's unpack this verse. We're in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 9, and it says, "Know therefore that the Lord your God is God. He is the faithful God, keeping his covenant of love to 1,000 generations of those who love him and keep his commandments."
Let's just stop on that one phrase, 1,000 generations.
Yeah, that's the part that absolutely gets me. It's not just a big number. I mean, it's a scale that's almost, it's impossible for us to even imagine. If you think, 30 years for a generation? We're talking about 30,000 years of commitment.
Exactly. And the perspective is so important because it immediately yanks the idea of God's faithfulness out of, our everyday experiences with human relationships, which can be so fleeting. When Moses says 1,000 generations, he's making it clear that this commitment outlives everything, every empire, every king, every single one of our failures.
So to really feel the weight of what Moses is saying, we have to picture the scene. I mean, where are they when he's telling them this?
They're literally standing on the east bank of the Jordan River.
Wow.
The 40 years of wandering are finally over. And they're looking across the water at the Promised Land. This is the finish line of a promise made centuries before to Abraham.
So this is Moses's big farewell tour, his last will and testament, basically. He's not giving them some new rule. He's summarizing their entire history.
That's it exactly. He's saying, look around, look at where you are, and think about how you got here. Everything that happened, from Egypt to the water from the rock to the manna, none of it was an accident. It all points to this one single truth.
And that truth is the big reveal right there in the verse. The Lord your God is God, the faithful God. That wasn't just a nice thought for them, it was. It was their lived reality. It was the only explanation for why they were still standing.
Right. Their survival was completely inexplicable without God's faithfulness to a covenant. He started. I mean, they had broken their end of the deal constantly.
Constantly.
Complaining, idolatry, rebellion, you name it. And yet here they are, about to receive the promise. That's the evidence Moses is holding up.
Okay, so if the evidence is that undeniable, then we have to go back. We have to look at how this covenant even started. Because the need for this kind of promise, it began long before Moses.
Oh, way back. It goes back to the basic human problem. I mean, even after the flood, this massive reset, humanity just continued to fall into sin. That's the problem that God's covenant is the solution to.
So if people are always failing, any relationship that's built on human effort, it's doomed to fail.
It is. It would collapse instantly.
Yeah.
And that is where you see this incredible foundational act of just sovereign grace. God's answer to our failure wasn't more judgment. It was a choice. It was calling Abraham.
And the sources are really clear on this. It wasn't because Abraham was special or earned it. The choice was described as pure grace.
Which is so key because it immediately tells you that this whole relationship rests on God's character, not on our performance. God starts it, God sustains it, and God guarantees it.
And calling Abraham wasn't just a vague, "I'm with you." It came with 3 really specific promises. Can you walk us through those?
Sure. They're basically the blueprint for everything that follows. First, the promise of land, a physical place to call home. Second, the promise of descendants, that he'd become a great nation. And third, and this is the big one, that through his family, he would be a source of blessing to all nations.
What's so amazing about that to me is that it's this this three-part guarantee for a future that Abraham, just a regular guy, could never have achieved himself. It had to be God carrying it through.
Yeah. And this brings us to what I think is the most powerful insight from all this. The amazing nature of the covenant itself.
So let's talk about that difference you mentioned earlier. The difference between God just commanding something and him committing to something.
Well, what's so fascinating is when you realize that the creator of the universe never actually needed to make a covenant. He's all-powerful. He could have just ruled by decree.
Right. If the king issues a command, you just do it. His power makes it happen.
Exactly. So why would he go through the trouble of binding himself with a promise? He doesn't need a contract. He doesn't need us to agree to it.
It's the difference, I guess, between being ruled by an absolute monarch and being in a relationship with a dependable partner.
That's a perfect way to put it. Instead of just commanding from a distance, God chose to be close, to be dependable. He chose to make promises. And this is the critical part. He chose to faithfully keep them, even when it was hard. This commitment is a voluntary act of love.
Because if he had just commanded, the story would have been over at the first mistake.
The first mistake.
Yeah. The golden calf. The refusal to enter the land. I mean, divine justice could have just ended it right there.
But the journey didn't end. Their entire history proves that the covenant was stronger than their disobedience. So think about those 40 years in the desert. It was this cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rebellion, consequence, and then miraculous provision. Manna every morning, shoes that don't wear out, water from a rock. Why? Not because they suddenly deserved it, but because God was holding up promises he made centuries earlier to Abraham.
So the lesson in the desert isn't just about God's patience. It's about his faithfulness being this active, history-shaping force that just overrides our failure. It changes the definition of God from just powerful ruler to dependable partner.
That's it. He basically signed a contract with himself to see it through. And that's why Moses' speech at the Jordan is so powerful. He wasn't teaching them a new idea. He was just summarizing the evidence. He is the faithful God because you are alive and standing here to prove it.
But that scale, that 30,000-year guarantee, it can feel so huge, so ancient. It's hard to connect that to my Monday morning stress. So how do we build that bridge? What does this ancient promise mean for us today in the 21st century?
And that's the whole point, right? The application. This reflection doesn't just end with a, wow, that was cool history. It extends a personal invitation. The dependability we see in Deuteronomy 7 isn't some artifact in a museum. It's a living, breathing assurance for you.
So the challenge is to move from just knowing about God's faithfulness in the past to actually engaging with it now.
Yes, the invitation is right there in the source material, to walk with this faithful God and to actively experience his covenant love. This is where that ancient promise becomes your current reality.
But what about that last part of the verse? It says, the covenant is kept for those who love him and keep his commandments. I mean, that can sound a little conditional, can't it? Is that a burden we have to carry?
That's a great question. It's vital. But if we see that clause through the lens of that pure grace we just talked about, the grace that kept saving Israel when they failed, it changes the meaning completely. The reflection suggests that our response isn't the price we pay for the promise. It's the path to fully experiencing it.
Okay, so it's not a transaction. It's not, if you obey, then I'll be faithful. It's more like, because I am absolutely faithful, your response of love and obedience is what brings you into the joy of that reality.
Precisely. If you are truly certain of God's complete and voluntary dependability, your natural response is trust. It's delight. God's consistency invites our consistency. And we show that through loving him and keeping his commands.
And what's the outcome of that? When we accept that invitation and lean into this dependable love, what happens inside of us?
The source material is very clear on this. The outcome is immediate and internal. When you accept the invitation and you respond in love, walking in the certainty of his commitment, the result is strength. It's vitality. It says, strength and joy arise in your heart as you do.
That's such a beautiful picture. It's not the heavy weight of duty. It's a source of energy that comes from resting in a promise that's already guaranteed for thousands of generations. Knowing he's faithful isn't just a fact. It's the fuel for your joy right now.
Exactly. The core assurance of Deuteronomy 7.9 is that you are walking with a God who is active, committed, and absolutely dependable. The lesson isn't just that God was faithful. It's that his faithfulness defines your reality today.
So to just wrap up this deep dive, we started with Moses, looking back at a history that was only possible because God chose to make promises instead of just giving commands. And we learned that this commitment is a voluntary act of love, guaranteed for millennia.
And we end here with the understanding that this promise is still active, it's still available, and it's inviting a response from us today, a response of love that brings immediate strength and joy.
May this deep dive into the reflection on God's enduring covenant be a small light for your walk with Christ today.
And maybe here's a final thought for you to mull over. If God's faithfulness really extends to 1,000 generations, a commitment he chose to make, not one, he had to, what does that massive, enduring scale change about how you see your challenges or decisions today? Does that perspective maybe shrink your immediate problems down to size?
A really powerful thought to take with you. Thank you so much for joining us for this reflection.
Thank you.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.
You called Abraham by your grace, chose him though we could not see. You made promises of blessing, and you kept them faithfully. You led Israel through the desert, guided them with love and might. Even when their hearts were wandering, your covenant still held tight. Before the rising sun each day, called Abraham by your grace, chose him though we could not see. You made promises of blessing, and you kept them faithfully. You led Israel through the desert, guided them with love and might. Even when their hearts were wandering, your covenant still held tight. Before the rising sun each day,